Welcome, everyone, to The Outer Watch. I'm your host, Anthony Vultaggio. Today, I have the privilege of sitting down with a remarkable priest, leader, and a son of Hawaii, the very Reverend Lane Akiona of the Congregation of Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary. Now, Father Lane is the provincial superior of the U.S. province, and that role spans various cultures and continents and communities. And he's also one of the senior chaplains of the Order of St. Lazarus of Jerusalem. And he has many honors that reflect both his spiritual lineage and his deep Hawaiian heritage. Now, today, we're going to spend a little bit of time learning more about Father Lane, his vocation story, his charism for the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, and the legacy of St. Damien, and what it truly means to live outside the walls, to serve others when you're putting yourself at risk, and also not just health-wise, but physically. So, Father Lane, thank you for joining us here on The Outer Watch. It's a privilege to be with you. Let me just start off with a simple question. Hopefully it's simple, but you grew up on Molokai, and your family has always been from Hawaii?
Yes, that is true. My grandparents migrated from the island of Maui and Hana and migrated to Molokai, and they found work on Molokai, and that had became the home of their family and my parents and uncles and aunts as well too.
When did you start feeling that calling to become a priest?
Actually, I was very much involved in the church as a young man before I finished high school, and there was no inclination on my part. I wanted to be a Hawaiian practitioner, which would share about the Hawaiian culture and its history and all of the integral cultural elements that I was brought up with. It wasn't until I left Molokai and went to Oahu, which was cosmopolitan of many things, is when I began to have a conversion, questioning what am I doing with my life? What is it that I want to do? And like all good Catholics, you go to confession thinking that you did something wrong. And the pastor that I went to confession to was one of our missionary priests from Belgium. And so he then introduced me to our Sacred Heart Seminary, which was in a local location in Oahu. And that began the discernment for vocation. Now, my grandmother, who is very dear to me and loved me greatly, cried when I told her I was considering going to the seminary.
Mm.
But the satisfying answer that I gave her was that I would be going to college and getting a degree, which is what she always wanted for her children and grandchildren as well. So I was able to satisfy her with that answer.
Well, so tears. So it sounds like it wasn't tears of joy, Father. So do you think was her real concern about the priesthood for
Well,
you?
I think very often people have this image about priests and religious that they live poor, you know, which is true, but it's living in that spirit of our lives and what we choose to dedicate. And she didn't want me to be poor.
Mm.
She wanted me to be successful, and my aunt also wanted to be a woman religious and was discouraged by my grandmother. So I think now that her grandson is asking for a religious vocation, I think brought up that same sentiment. So
Wow. And so, but you didn't let that discourage you. You continued on. What did your parents think?
well, I think because I was raised by my grandparents, my parents were in favor of whatever decision that I would make for my future, and was encouraging as well too. So
Wow. And then were there any moments of doubt in that period of time?
Actually, no, there was more moments of affirmation. And so I think the determining factor was when I was graduating with my bachelor's degree, is when my grandmother said to me, "You make whatever decision that you want to make for your life." And so that was the affirmation that I think I needed to continue my studies in religious life and then on to seminary.
Well, you've been ordained a priest now for 44 years, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
And um, what specifically do you think the Congregation of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary really led you to join that order?
I think that the thing that inspired me was not only Damien, but I think because they're a missionary order, and I always wanted to be a missionary. The congregation has many mission stations throughout the world, and so I think that was the driving force more than anything else.
To describe, many folks may have heard of Father Damien, but and knew he worked with the lepers, but what brought him to this work, and what brought him to Hawaii and Molokai, or actually it's Kalawa'u, right?
Oh wow, yes, that's right. I think like all missionary groups, I think Damien was intrigued by the fact of leaving his home country and going somewhere else to proclaim and to witness his faith. The story is very famous that Damon didn't go through the normal procedures of being sent as a missionary. His brother Pamphile was missioned to Hawaii, but got sick and couldn't make the trip. So Damien, as a young religious, went directly to the Superior General, asked permission, which is unheard of, and got the permission to go on mission in place of his brother. And so there was already that zeal and courage on his part to want to do what his brother was going to do. So
And then um, was there the formation of the island of Kalawa'u and this colony?
okay. Damien came way before leprosy became a major health risk. And so I think originally the peninsula had native Hawaiians living there already. But it was selected because of its isolation. It is surrounded by one wall of like 2,000-foot cliffs surrounded by the ocean. So it became a natural habitat to isolate people. And so that's why I think it was selected for that particular purpose. And it proved to be something that the health department felt was workable with. So.
And then how did Mother Mary Ann come into the picture? And why was she such a big figure?
Mother Mary Ann came because at that time Father Damien had requested help because the number of patients had grown and he no longer could manage the numbers. And also that Damien had contracted leprosy, so which means that he was not able to fully function as he used to. So that's where they sent an emissary, a member of our religious order, who went and wrote letters to about 50 religious congregations, seeing who would respond. And lo and behold, Mother Mary Ann's community, a young religious community, she responded in the affirmation. And because her sisters were nurses, so this would have been a perfect fit for Damien's requests.
So give us a little indication of how big it grew as a colony. How?
Well, I think when Damien was there, he could have had at least 800 patients at one time.
Wow.
Which it just is overwhelming, and so and because I think because of his health was deteriorating, he really wanted to ensure that, as he called them, his children would be taken care of. And that's why I think sending the emissary to request help from other religious.
Yeah, 800. That's a lot. It's a lot to take
Yes,
care of. And
that's correct.
how
Yes.
big was his team, or how big was the medical team to serve that 800 then?
Well, you would have the medical team from the state health department, which was lean at that time. And Damien would also have the kukuas, those who were not victims of leprosy, who would come and help because they had particular skills, like in nursing and other things and feeding and things like that. So his team was basically some of the Hawaiians who had the capacity to help him. And then also, Damien had an assistant. We call him Joseph Dutton, who came. He was in the military, came looking for some kind of solace and purpose for his life, and read about Damien, and then came to the peninsula and became Damien's assistant to help him in the great work. So.
Well, these, what did you call them? These helpers, kokua
Kukuas, yeah, which is helper
means
in Hawaii.
helper in Hawaiian. And these were volunteers, I'm assuming.
Yes, many of them were, and as I had mentioned earlier, that some of them, because of some of their relatives had contracted leprosy, they decided to come with them to care for them. And so, and when their relatives have passed on, they decided to stay on to be of service to the other patients who were there. So.
Wow. But they were putting themselves at risk.
there there is with Polynesians, especially Hawaiians, um, they they live what they profess, and there are things that they love what we call the aina, which is the land, and they love the people. Those are two essential components of our culture. And so regardless if they would be put in danger, harm's way, they have chose to help those who cannot help themselves. And I think the longer that they stayed in the peninsula, they realized that many of the people needed help. Some could not walk, some were blind. So I think they felt that they were of greater service to them. Another component that became very prominent with Damien is that he befriended many Protestants who felt that his work was exemplary. And so they began to help. So there was no distinction of religion or anything. They were just there to help in the great work that Damien was doing. So
Well, how many are still there today? How many patients?
today on the peninsula, there's only 3 patients that are living there. And then they have the Department of Health staff. And then you have the National Parks Service people there as well, too.
How old are the remaining three? Are they all of advanced age or
The youngest is 102,
what?
and yes, 102, and the other two are in their 90s.
Wow. Wow, amazing.
I mean, yes, definitely.
How do you think they would describe their experience to you today? I'm assuming you've met them and worked with them.
Yes, I have. Yes.
So how do they describe that to you? Their life, the meaning of their life, being here on Kalawa'u.
I think many of them came as children. So yes, it was a traumatic experience to come to this place of isolation. But as they grew and mature, they began to realize that they can be a great source of comfort for the newcomers that come, which they never had when they came. So it they've kind of reverted back to being more of a support for the new patients who are arriving after them, and helping to teach them what we call the ropes of the settlement and things like that. So
Yeah, I think people forget, I certainly do myself, that it was really a place of confinement. It was really a place to, keep them away from the general population. So it could feel like it was a banishment. It could feel like they were really sent off to, um, uh, be away from everyone.
That's correct. Yes, and to go into a settlement that is very different from what you have experienced from your own homes. There were designated sections for the children and the single men and single women, and I think all of that was developed by Damien just to kind of maintain. A cordial relationship on the peninsula, and also to protect the children, because sometimes the children could be abused in whatever fashion because of their situation and the leprosy itself too. So
So then it was really beyond just healing the body, it was really soul and spirit.
that is correct, and that's why Damien is very often referred to as the physician, the funeral director, the one who buried them. He was the one who did the funeral mass. He was the choir director, but he taught patients how to do these um, different kind of tasks so that they would raise, even when the person passes, that they would give them the highest possible dignity, even in death. And I think that became the hallmark of Damien's work. Even in death, they were treated as a person of God.
Well, you became the provincial superior in 2021, is that correct?
That is correct,
Your
yes.
order. And how did that come about?
Well, it was a surprise to me, but like all things, when we go for these elections, I just said to my brothers who elected me, I said, well, I said, you choose who the Spirit leads you to. And I said, I'm open to whatever the decision might be for the brothers. So.
And after so many years now in that position, do you feel that it's still something that you accept as your path? Do you think, or do you think that now maybe there'll be a different way for you?
Yes, I think for me, this is my second term. I was reelected a year and a half ago. And I think maybe the greatest gift I could bring to the congregation is teaching our brothers how to manage what we have, and at the same time still have a mutual relationship with brothers, listening to their needs, helping them in their struggles, but also affirming them in the vocation that they have chosen to take on. We have many Pacific Islanders which we never had in the past, and so is an adaptation for them to an American culture has been the greatest challenge, but not impossible. And I hope that my term as provincial has helped them, and that's why I'm here in Texas. We're ordaining our 16th priest from Fiji, and so I think it's a great support for them to say that we're here to help you to become the best priest that you possibly can be.
So now tell me a little bit about the order of Saint Lazarus of Jerusalem. First, when did you hear about it? What made you want to join? Um,
Actually, the Order of St. Lazarus, they wanted to use my church for their ceremony, and I'm always welcome to receive anyone, and that was the first opportunity that I've gotten to know about the Order of St. Lazarus, and the more and more that the people who are involved in the order I have gotten to know, I began to realize the great work that they continue on, that is maybe not directly connected to Damien, but in many respects, the spirit of helping patients with leprosy, and whichever possible way that we can. And I think that's where my interest came, because I saw the connection of St. Damien and my brothers who worked in the settlement, and now today in the 21st century, and how can we help them either with funding programs, and it's broader. It's not just here in Hawaii or in the U.S., but it's, it's an international organization that we are able to influence and touch people as well too. So
I think most people do not realize that leprosy is still a disease that affects the world, and seems as if most people think that it's sort of been cured and gone away, but that's not true at all, is it?
no, no, it isn't. We have a region that belongs to our province is in India. We have about 25 brothers who are there. And that is our major work right there, is working with leprosy patients and their children as well. So
Now, did you know that the Knights of St. Lazarus of Jerusalem, did you know that it was an ecumenical order before you explored being a part of it?
yes, I did. And that was the exciting part, because as a young priest, we're very much involved with the ecumenical element in the parishes I was involved in. And so I always enjoyed coming together with the various religious traditions for common time to pray, or just for gathering and meetings and things like that. So that was the other appealing part of the Order of St. Lazarus.
And it sounds like St. Damien really did the same thing. He was ecumenical in the help that you said he received from other denominations, like Protestant denominations.
I think that's very true, and maybe during the time of Damien, we didn't call it ecumenism, but Damien saw it as more of a human relationship when we work with each other for a common cause, because many of the patients in Kalawao were not only Catholics, majority of them were Catholics, but there were also Protestants, and there were some Jewish patients as well too. So it made it a full scale kind of embracement of each other.
So now you have been a chaplain for the Knights of St. Lazarus for about 10 years, I think.
That's correct. Yes.
What do you think some of your favorite memories are?
I, um, I think for me is the annual gathering we have every year, because every year we see new members coming in, and with that same kind of enthusiasm that we had when we were invested, and also just to sharing our stories and sharing what we're doing in the various parts of the country, that all with the same cause and purpose, but also with the same kind of zeal and dedication that I think the reason why we joined the Order of St. Lazarus.
Was there one particular event or experience you had as a knight that still stays with you today?
I think the event that we just had in San Antonio, our last gathering, um, there was an elderly couple that came up to me during the banquet and began to reminisce of the gatherings that we had together, and it was just a wonderful opportunity to share the joy that she had about us being together, connected, even though we're so far removed from each other. I think that's the greatest experience I've had with the Order of Lazarus, is that sense of camaraderie, and I think we look forward to the annual meeting so that we can continue that same kind of spirit and connectedness with each other.
From a spiritual standpoint, did you find that your spiritual life has has grown through your work with the Knights of Lazarus?
I would say so, yes. It allows me to really appreciate the many good things that the order is doing, but also it helps me to build up that same kind of zeal and spirit that maybe Damien was sensing when he was all alone in the peninsula. But now that we have great supporters from each other through the Order of St. Lazarus. And I'm sure that if Damien had the Order of St. Lazarus working with him, I think he would have accomplished much more and greater things for the patients who were there.
Well, Father, I'm really honored that you spent this time with us today. And I want to give you an opportunity if there was anything that you feel like you'd like our audience to know before we say goodbye. What do you think that is? What's missing?
I would encourage our membership to continue the great work that they're doing. And sometimes we may not see the effect of our work, but know that people are being touched. And very often we won't know the results of what we do until later on when we have an opportunity to discuss these events and efforts that we make on behalf of the order as well too. So
It's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you all for listening and being here at the Outer Watch. My name is Anthony Voltaggio. Have a good evening.